From the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., this is Update One, the club's official podcast. It features newsworthy stories originating from the NPC facilities, as well as broader topics related to journalism, communications, press freedom, and transparency.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Update One. This is your host, Shannon Fisher. American Legion Post 20 is headquartered right at the National Press Club, and we have the commander of American Legion Post 20, Tom Young, who is a decorated, now retired Air National Guard flight engineer, who's also a journalist, novelist, and nonfiction writer. And he is our guest today to talk to us about this post and to tell us about the American Legion. Tom, welcome.
Well, thank you, Shannon. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and your listeners here. Yes, as you mentioned, a lot of people might be surprised to know that there is an American Legion post affiliated with the National Press Club, and it's been there for more than a century. One of the oldest Legion posts. It was chartered in 1919 at the suggestion of famed World War I General John Blackjack Pershing. He was a member, an associate member of the National Press Club at the time, and he was very active in promoting the new American Legion. And when it came to public affairs, he was no dummy. He knew that there were a number of journalists who were veterans of World War I, and he thought it would make a lot of sense for the National Press Club to have an American Legion post, and that would help spread the message of the American Legion and put its issues at the forefront. So Post 20 at the National Press Club goes all the way back to 1919.
That is amazing. And I understand there was a centennial celebration at the club and that the cake was cut by a naval officer's sword, which I think is so cool. So tell me a little bit about the American Legion. What was the purpose of founding the organization and how has that evolved into what the Legion is today?
Well, the best answer I can give for that would be to refer to the American Legion mission statement. And it begins to enhance the well-being of America's veterans, their families, our military, and our communities by our devotion to mutual helpfulness. The Legion promotes veteran welfare. It promotes knowledge of civics and our form of government, good citizenship. Just to give you a rundown of just a few of the Legion's programs, that includes something called Boys State and Girls State, which gives young people education and experience in civics. They learn things like how bills are passed and so forth.
Oh, cool.
There are also oratorical contests where young people give orations on some aspect of the U.S. Constitution with an emphasis on a citizen's duties and obligations to our government and so forth. Also, to help promote veterans' issues and to have a little fun, there's the American Legion Riders for motorcycle owners. I am not a biker, but I enjoy seeing the American Legion Riders and other veterans' motorcycle groups as they rumble past.
That sounds like fun. Well, so it sounds like it's meant to help both veterans and the community at large. I love that it helps with veteran services and with teaching civics, because I think we can never instill enough lessons about civics to our children and our community.
Exactly.
The post at the National Press Club. So you were elected commander this summer. What do you do in that role at the post?
Well, it was certainly an honor to be elected commander. Our post has some very illustrious members. It has been commanded in the past by some very illustrious people. Our past commanders include McClendon Youth Service founder Sarah McClendon and former National Press Club President John Cosgrove.
Mm-hmm.
More recently, our recent commanders have been Navy veterans Jim Noon and Ken Delecky, who both did a fabulous job of leading that post. And those are big shoes to fill.
Wow.
To give a little bit of information about our month-to-month activities, every other month we have a meeting in the McClendon Room in the National Press Club. We usually have a guest speaker to speak on a particular issue of interest to veterans. It might be someone speaking on a military issue or a veterans issue. On occasion, we've also done what I call field trips to sites of interest to veterans. Not too many years ago, we did a great trip to visit the Navy Yard in Washington. There have been trips to Civil War battlefield sites, and we hope there's more of that on the horizon for us.
Definitely. So it sounds like there's a lot of continuing education and continuing information about what is happening in combat around the world. Now, you have combat experience. You're a flight combat veteran. You've served in Afghanistan, Iraq, and you've flown missions in Bosnia, Kosovo, and cargo missions all over the world. Tell me a little bit about how your military experience has shaped you.
Well, when you serve in the military in any capacity, and especially if you serve in the military in wartime, it certainly becomes a part of you, a part of your psyche. I would hasten to add that as far as veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan are concerned, I had it pretty easy. I was lucky enough to be in the airlift business. I was with crews that did come under fire, but none of us were hurt. We did not experience some of the awful things that infantry troops and so forth go through. So my experience of war was not nearly as awful as what some people have to go through, but it did give me an idea of what other people were going through. For example, when we were transporting the wounded and that sort of thing. And it certainly gives you an education in the sacrifices that military personnel make. It's certainly something that stays with you all your life.
I would imagine so. Yes. I mean, those are sights that very few people will ever get to see, and it's very different seeing a photograph of something happening in wartime and actually being there and experiencing it and saving the lives of wounded soldiers. So it's I would imagine that really does kind of shape your worldview. And you're also a journalist, and so you 10 years with the Associated Press, which is, I imagine, what brought you to the National Press Club. So how did that military service how did that come to your work as a journalist?
Well, it's a funny story. In a way, my work as a journalist led me to the military. Back during the first Gulf War, we remember Operation Desert Shield, which turned into Operation Desert Storm back when Saddam Hussein first invaded Kuwait. At that time,
right. Yeah.
I was not yet in the military in any capacity, but I was interested in the military, and I was interested in flying. Mm-hmm. And when Guard and Reserve units began to get activated that summer, the summer of Desert Shield, at the AP, we did a lot of feature stories that I thought were pretty interesting about people who were living what I thought were very interesting double lives. They had their civilian careers, and then they were also serving in the Guard and Reserve. Yeah. And Desert Shield was the first time since the Korean War that Guard and Reserve troops had been called up in large numbers. So we had stories about, for example, I remember an attorney who was a senior NCO in the Marines, and he got called up. But there was one story that struck me in particular. It was about a television reporter, I think in Louisiana, who was also a pilot in the Air National Guard or the Air Force Reserve. He was an A-10 attack jet pilot, and he was a journalist. And I thought, well, heck, if he can do that, I can do that too.
Sure.
So I joined the Air National Guard and became a flight engineer, and thoroughly enjoyed that experience.
It really is amazing the double lives of people who are in reserve branches of the military, because you're living your life, you've got your profession, and then you just never know when your number's going to be called up and you're going to be serving in active duty. And so who is eligible for membership with the American Legion?
That's a good question, Shannon. And if you have served at least one day of active military duty since 1941, which would include pretty much all of us who've been in the military now,
yes.
And you are honorably discharged, or you are still serving active military duty honorably, you're eligible for membership with the American Legion.
Excellent. So that is a lot of people who are eligible, and I'm sure that these services are very appreciated.
Absolutely.
And so this must be a camaraderie when you get together with other members of the Legion. You guys have such a shared history that other people really can't begin to imagine. What does the Legion mean to you?
It's a way of continuing the brotherhood and sisterhood of military service. When I retired from the military, someone gave me some good advice. He said, you're going to miss the camaraderie, but by joining a group like the American Legion, you can get a lot of it back. And that has certainly been the case. There are no bonds like those formed during military service. And through veterans groups like the Legion, you can keep that as part of your life.
Excellent. And now you stepped into leadership in that realm, and you have the opportunity to impact the lives of lots of people who are seeking that same fellowship and that same shared bond. So we at the National Press Club thank you for heading American Legion Post 20. How many posts are there total?
I would have to look that up. I'm not sure how many Legion posts there are nationwide, but they're all over the place. There are several just in the D.C. area. And I'm glad you brought that up, though, because one thing I would like to emphasize is that our post is open to anyone eligible for Legion membership. You do not have to be a member of the National Press Club. And our meetings are open to anyone in the National Press Club. You don't have to be a Legion member. So, for example, if you're interested in whatever guest speaker we have at a given meeting, you're welcome to join us for that meeting, whether you're a member of the Legion or not.
Great. That is very good to know. And so you are a commercial airline captain, and you're also a novelist, and you've written some nonfiction books, and your books really kind of tell the story through the eyes of real military service. So what inspired you to bring that to the written word?
Well, I had always been interested in writing fiction. When I was studying journalism in college at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, I also took courses in creative writing. And after college, along the way, while I was working as a journalist, I also wrote short stories, and I got the occasional short story published in literary magazines here and there, but I never had a good idea for a novel that I could really sink my teeth into until after 9/11, and my unit got activated, and we eventually started flying in and out of Afghanistan and then later Iraq, and that gave me plenty of material to work with, and that became the inspiration for my first novel, The Mullah's Storm, which turned into a series of 6 books set in present-day conflicts. And then when that series ended, I turned to historical fiction. I'd always had an interest in World War II, and my latest 2 novels have been stories set in World War II, and I'm working on another World War II novel right now.
Oh, fantastic. So you've got quite a prolific writing history with it involving your history and American history, which I think I think that history is so undervalued in our society today. Everything is now, and everything is what is current. And we forget all of the lessons that history can teach us, both personally as a society. And so I think it's great that you're keeping all that alive and keeping your creative juices flowing while maintaining your connection to your history. Well, American Legion Commander Tom Young, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much, Shannon. It's been a pleasure to speak with you.
And for Update 1 at the National Press Club, this is Shannon Fisher. See you next time.
You have been listening to Update 1, the official podcast of the National Press Club, the world's leading professional organization for journalists and a vigorous advocate of press freedom worldwide. If you have any questions or comments about Update 1, send an email to update1podcast@gmail.com.